Maybe because I started it, so on the top of the screen there are three dots. I
Okay.
clicked it,
Okay.
and then there's a start recording. But
Okay. Cool. So first of all, thanks for making yourself available at like next to no notice, less than an hour. So I think that's yeah, I'm super grateful. But it's just that I'm leaving on like annual leave also. But I wanted to try to introduce you, the two of you. But I guess Julia's not here, so maybe at least this creates a room where you could talk. Uh, so there's that. I think the thing is, I felt like because you have some experience working with, I guess, Linux in general, possibly,
not really.
but you write a lot more code than the average engineer does, I would think. Just like with your experience, exposure to Python and things like that, I felt like both
Yeah.
of you could possibly riff off of each other a little bit and learn different things because Julia's more aerospace and your physics, and you've done astrophysics, but you have more of an exposure to programming in itself, I think, than an engineering degree provides. So I felt like there might be ways to just like connect the two of you both technically but also topically in some way because you're both interested in doing orbital mechanics related stuff among other things. And my interest also is that, of course, it's not like I'm saying you're an expert in the software engineering side of things or the software development side of things and Linux and all of that stuff. But I told Julia to also like get into the Linux world a little bit, and it's just to sort of provide the fundamental knowledge that I think is just useful as you sort of like leave university. But actually, it makes time in university also better. If I'd known better when I was younger, I would have probably learned a lot more of these kinds of things. So I want to like focus on getting some fundamentals right in terms of using GitHub and how you can work together and like share code or something like that. But also maybe it's just a good collaboration tool. That's one side of it. And because you're all also quite young, not that I'm old, I consider myself quite young, but the thing is that I think you may want to also think about how people start companies or startups and things like that. Like small ideas can turn into big things, and oftentimes they're rooted in being able to write code and share code with each other when you work in a team, and that comes out of things like using Linux to write code, possibly, or like to do development, not to write code, but to do development. It's usually the platform that people like to go to. Doesn't often happen on a Windows platform. Happens on at least a Unix-based sort of operating system. Then there's the use of GitHub to share things between each other, especially as we go to working more remotely. It becomes the way we operate. Is that you might be sitting here today, you might be in India tomorrow. Julia's in Spain, she might be in London. It keeps like changing. Our locations change a lot, but we've sort of developed a way to sort of at least put our work up. And the reason we meet in person is just that we like hanging out with people. So if you can sort of like do both, but separately, right? Like sometimes we're in the office and we're like all just hanging out as opposed to working. And sometimes when we're hanging out, we're talking about work, and you can't really like do that also correctly. So I think like there is this kind of weird balance that can be struck when you use all of these tools, and you find that out when you go into industry a lot later, I think, as a person. So mostly that's like what I'm trying to like get into. And I thought I would like introduce you guys to a few of these kinds of things. So let's see if I can like join on my computer also. Add this device, and we'll keep it muted. So what's happening with like what you looked at in the last week? So we can maybe start there.
Yeah, so when you sent me the email, I was wondering what Julia actually decided to work on. Because you told me that she could be working on robotic stuff,
Yeah.
which, I mean, if she's doing that, then how is her and my work supposed to be together?
So that's the thing, right? Is that you can all do different applications, but I want to sort of be like, if you want to work on the same kind of project, great. If you want to work on different projects, also great. But the kinds of tools that we would use as a research group or a research lab of some kind will always be the same. We will use Linux, we will use SymPy for modeling things, we will use Git to store our stuff also and share with each other. When we fall in trouble in terms of how to use Git and GitHub, we become each other's resources. We may not be able to give the specific guidance on the specific project, but some of the tools will remain sort of homogeneous. Okay, it's like learning to use LaTeX to write a CV or something like that as opposed to Word, right? Like, or you could use Word and maybe you don't know how to format something. You still ask someone, you go to Google and you look for things. So we can support each other on some aspects of the tools, And that's really the kind of environment we want to make, is that, actually it's better when people use some of the same tools but do different things, because we learn about new things as well as fixing things that we're all using but we have incomplete knowledge about. So it's trying to create that kind of dynamic. So the freedom to choose a project is always up to you all. But the other thing I was going to say is that if it comes to doing robotics also, that was another thing that I would bring up, is there is this robotics competition that's going to start in mid-August for like 3 or 4 months. It's for essentially like artificial intelligence and manipulation. So I'll post the link here. You guys can take a look at it when you get a chance. I say guys, which is also not fair. It's just a slip of the tongue. It's like, it's you all or everyone can take a look at it. But sometimes, just bad habits. Oh, that's the wrong one. So I guess there's a reason for that link also. So I'm going to post two links here actually. Okay. And I'll explain both of these links. So there are two links. The first link is a GitHub link. This GitHub link is from one of my undergraduate students who did a project with me uh, in the last year, and Julia was also one of them. But this chap, Mughis Asif, this is his profile. If you go into that page, what you'll see is something he says DIP, which is a double inverted pendulum. It's just his acronym for that. Over here, he shows you how to balance a double inverted pendulum using something called a PPO algorithm. Okay, PPO is one of these state-of-the-art machine learning algorithms today that sort of just takes a lot of data and trains the system to balance itself. This is not a very mathematical framework. It's a more data intensive kind of framework. And, there are just basically two approaches to doing control. And this is one of the more modern approaches that computer scientists focus on more than people who develop models using SymPy. But the reason I'm sharing this is that he shows you how you can actually do your work in a way where you put your stuff up on GitHub. That's part one. So he's written a nice README file. As you can see, if you scroll down, there are pictures and just like, how do you get started in the project? And he's like, okay, environment setup. He describes the way of doing these things. Maybe I should also share my screen. Maybe that would help so that you see what I see as opposed to something else. Let me see how I can do that. Share screen. Start broadcast. Let me know when you can see my screen. Okay. I think
now
you
I
will
can.
see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. So we go here, right? So this is his GitHub page. Actually, this is specific to this project. If you click on his name, you'll see that this is his profile. He works on a variety of projects. This is just how GitHub works, right? Like if you've not used it before, this is what you can expect to see. And this is back to the project. This is the DIP project. So you'll usually see someone's name followed by a slash and the name of the project if we share specific code. These are a list of all the files that he's sort of like written. One of them is the README file. The way GitHub works is that if you have a readme.md file, you'll see what's in that file, right? And this is just the rendered version of that. So it uses Markdown and things like that. But you'll understand if you start to download the stuff and try to recreate it on your own, you'll see how the stuff works. But this is basically the readme.md file. So you can see that it labels it here too, but it's just picking up the contents here. If you go in there, you'll see it's the same file, right? So we just went into the readme file. Following okay? Or is that too fast? Okay. So one part that Mukesh's stuff shows you is that GitHub is a place where you can just like keep sharing your stuff. And also another thing that he does is the main content of his work, which is the results and the implementation of code, happens in something called an IPyNB file, which is an IPython notebook. Now you may have already seen these things. This is like a Jupyter notebook. You can go into jupyterhub.com or whatever it is and like try to play around with these things. Maybe you've seen these in your classes already, but it's just an online web-based sort of platform to be able to write code. And this is the rendered version of that file. You can't change the code here, but you could download this and like, start it in your browser somewhere else by using that file. So if you've not used that, I would say look up Jupyter Hub and IPython notebooks and see what resources you can find. Now you can see that he's written a whole notebook over here. Again, I would say, read what he says. He gives you like some idea, like, how to just like start working with this stuff. He's like, please install the following dependencies. He gives us instructions. This makes it easy, not just to like read his stuff, but also if you wanted to do the same things he's done and you get error messages, you can be like, oh, he said do these things, install these things. So you can sort of like fix that. So he says SymPy, NumPy, Matplotlib, PyTorch, right? Okay, and then he then starts by giving you an overview of the project, describes what he's trying to do, Whether it's right or not is a different thing. We have to like engage with all the content and think about what we're doing. So, that's a different part of it, but it describes stuff. And you can see that then there's code. So you can do two things essentially in an IPython notebook, which is like write content like this, or you can write code and execute it also. So you can see there are many executions as you keep going down. Let's see where we can find an executed code. So there is like actually a set of equations over here. It says unknown character and all of that kind of stuff, but you can see that basically he's passed a print command and he tries to just basically print out something, and that's this term L, and you get that there's some output, and you can tell that you're typing things in when there's an in to the left and it's like a gray box, and then you get some output which says out, and maybe this is the sixth line of code, that's why it says out 6. Okay, so far so good. So what you're seeing over here is that there's a way to take like different bits of Python libraries like SymPy, NumPy, and all of that, write some code, get some output, make some equations, possibly generate plots, which he shows at the bottom of this notebook. Okay, there are equations there. Let's see where the plots are. Plots are out here, right? So these are all again generated using this browser-based tool, which is all, basically it's got like this one file called an IPython notebook that does all this grunt work and shows you these plots. So you can do like full end-to-end analysis basically in your browser using the right tools. And you can also share all of this stuff on GitHub. So this allows me to share with you in a more specific way the kind of work that Mukesh has done, right? So you can see that it becomes useful not just for ourselves within the group, but even beyond. Like more students come and go in my life, or maybe you want to show this work when you're interviewing and they're like, hey, can we see some of your contributions? Just be like, yeah, come to my GitHub page and this is what it looks like. So a lot of jobs actually encourage people to use this kind of like framework, especially if you work even a little bit in software. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So my point again being that when you enter this lab kind of setup that I'm trying to make, I want you to pick up tools that are employable, things that you can share outside of the class. And it's not just about the project, but the fact that we use these tools. Now, what I've not showed you is the part where you start to learn to use Git and GitHub and these kinds of things. So these are, I think, things that we Google. Or a good place to start is just like try to follow Muhis's instructions. Not that they're going to be super detailed, because there's always some kind of presumption of like, oh, this person's probably done this before, or they will know how to use Google and find things out. So I would say if you've not used Git and GitHub before, maybe you've just clicked on a download kind of thing, I would say learn to use the command line. So let me see if I can share the screen on my computer and try to actually show you how I would do what Mukesh has done. Like how I would start off if I was in your shoes and I got Mukesh's code. Maybe that makes some more sense. I don't know. Tell me if that doesn't.
Last time you told me to look into this, I found a Coursera course on that, and I could maybe do that.
Yeah, but if you do a full course, then you're learning the course. And there are
Oh.
problems. Like I think it's a good thing to like look for these things, but the best way is not to like take a class. Honestly, I think sometimes this is where education fails us in a way, is that there's like 7 weeks of content. You can't really consume 7 weeks of content in a way that you understand it in, let's say, a week. So you have to learn only by doing, right? So I'll just show you how I would do something like this. And I would also make a lot of mistakes and I don't understand what's happening. There is some value to reading, I would say, more than watching someone do this, because you read and you're reading it on your browser and then you're like copy pasting some of the code into your terminal. Okay, so how do I share my screen? Just let me see. Input computer sound, no. Okay, let's just say I am. How do I share my whole screen? What can you see on the screen right now? Let's see.
Right now, nothing.
Nothing. Huh? Okay. Where's your shared window? Sharing is paused. Okay. Okay, hold on. So let me try to launch iTerm. Maybe that's what I can do. Okay. Now you're here. Screen. Oh yeah, okay. I can share the screen. That's even better. Can you see the whole screen?
Yes.
I'm gonna close this also. Close that. Okay. So now what you see on the screen is essentially a GitHub page, the page that Mukesh has written, right? I'm guessing things might look small, but I'll try to like highlight the parts that matter. Okay. So on the left is this window. I'm going to drag it around. This is Mukesh's code on GitHub that I shared the link to. And on the right, you have this terminal, right? This is, I mean, if you were to go into Linux or something like that, you have something called a terminal. So you want to learn about how to open a terminal, launching a terminal, terminal, for if you're trying to like spell these things. So it's just this black window where you can type all sorts of things, and you get whatever it is. So a basic command over here is something like you want to change directories, you type cd, and let's say I want to go into my document folder, I do that. If you do ls, once you go into documents, you can see that you got this documents highlighted. Now I'm in the documents folder, and you type ls, and you can see a bunch of things. Now, something that I have done to my terminal is that I have nice colors that come out of this, because it's just painful when it's all just black, white, and you don't know what's the difference between a directory and a file and whatever else, like a JPEG or a PNG, which is an image. So these are all directories in my computer. Some of these this is a PowerPoint, so it's a different PPTX, right? So it detects the extension and shows you how things are supposed to look. You may not have these, don't worry, but you may realize as you keep coding that you don't want to look at the same boring colors. You want your screen to look a little more fun, a little more artistic for a coder, and then you try to implement these things. Anyway, so this is what the terminal looks like, okay? So what I'm going to do now is I changed out and went back to what is called the root directory. This is usually the sign for a root, this little tilde. And because I've done some funky things in my shell, you can see there's a home sign and it says an apple because it's detecting what kind of machine I am on, so on and so forth. You can do all these fun things. But my point being that now I want to change to my downloads directory, just because I want to get Mukeesh's code and put it in my downloads directory. And how would I do that? So I come to the left, I scroll down, and I see that Mukesh has said, like, okay, install Miniconda. He gives me the link for that. Then he says, open the terminal, which is the step that we are on. And he says, Git clone this thing. So I just take this section of code that he's written. He's been, oh man, mistake. He's been nice enough to also write it in a way where it gets rendered in a form that I know this looks like code, right? So this is like text, normal text, and this part looks like code. So I'm going to copy and paste it in my shell terminal here, where now I've moved my terminal, essentially. And you can see that it looks very similar in formatting over here as it did to the left where I stole the code from. So you can write things in a way that kind of makes sense. So I do that, and now we've cloned something. Did it work? It didn't work. Okay, it says permission denied. With that, what we can do? Maybe I do sudo git clone. Would that work? All right, so that worked. Are you familiar with what sudo is?
The fake?
Huh?
No, like just language wise.
Okay. Just language wise. So sudo, I'm talking about sudo. In Linux
Oh,
speak, sudo is becoming a super user of your computer. So there are admin privileges and regular privileges that you have on your computer. Okay, so
oh.
when you're at the terminal, sometimes you don't get permission to do certain things because they say that you are not. Okay, I'm just typing. Why? Okay, permanently added that. Okay, could not read from remote repository. I wonder why. Because maybe he's changed the name. So, okay, I'll come to this in a moment. Anyway, sudo is something else that you can look up. So these are some keywords. One is you go into the terminal, you want to look what that does. Then you want to look up sudo, sudo. There are some nice bash tutorials. Maybe I should link you guys to that as well. I know this is going to start to seem very hairy, but trust me, this is actually going to be useful in your lives if you try to get a job anywhere close to technology. Bash tutorial, maybe Surrey. I think Surrey had a good one. Linux tutorial for beginners. Yeah, this is probably like a good place to start by just understanding some very, very, very basic stuff in the world of using the Linux terminal. So there's like now a third resource basically. Okay. Anyway, now the way I would possibly get Mukeesh's code now would be the other safest way, I think, is this way. You click on the green button here, code, and it says HTTPS, SSH, whatever. I just take the text over there. You can click here and copy paste it. And then I come to my terminal and I type something called Git Clone and I paste the link. Okay? And I know this is sounding really intense, and I'll come to it in a moment and explain what each of these things does. I know. This is painful. Oh, okay. Made a typo. Gonna do this again. Okay, so we do this. And we learn to get his code. Right now, it's doing something, it's downloading all of the stuff from the internet. There are easier ways to do this, but I want us to try to learn to work on the terminal. Okay, like I would really encourage that you do this. So if you can follow these steps on your Linux machine somehow, and we can come to that in a second too, it would be really useful. Right now, all I've done is I've got Muhis's code. Let's see what it's called. I think it's called DIP, right? So I have autocomplete. It does that. I change into that. And if I do ls, it will list all the files in this directory, right? Any
Okay.
question, Pratyaksha, you should ask. Like, feel free to stop me. If I keep talking, it's not a good thing also.
Oh, it's just like there's so much stuff, and the only time I ever used it was to launch Jupyter.
Yeah. So I'm going to like do a recap. I'll tell you, you might have to take some notes on what I would say you should try to do, but just give me a moment. So you can see when I do ls, we see the readme.md file, we see the deep learning DIP, IPynB file, images, blah, all these things are basically what we see on the left in the list that is on this browser, right? So essentially we wrote a line of code to basically download all of this and store it in our computer somewhere. I stored it in the downloads directory. Okay. Now, why do we do this way? Is something that maybe you should not worry about. It's just be like, I was told these rules, I'm going to follow it. Okay. So that's one part for now. And it'll become evident maybe over a course of time. Like as we continue working, it may become clear why. All right. So what all did I do? Let's do a recap, right? We'll go up and we'll look at all the codes that I wrote. I said first I do a CD, which is change directory, into the downloads in my computer. You don't have to store yours there. Maybe you have another place where you delete things from or you collect garbage or something like that. So, that's where I stored it. Then I did something called Git Clone with a link of some kind. The successful one was something like this: Git Clone with a hyperlink with HTTPS something. How did I get that link? I got it by clicking on the green button here, and I see that there is stuff here, right? Do you see
Okay.
that?
Yeah.
So I took
Yeah.
that link and I put it after Git Clone. What does Git Clone do? Git is a command that connects somehow to a repository somewhere, or it's basically a tool of some kind that lets you download this code from GitHub at this moment. Let's just presume that's what it does.
Okay.
Clone is the specific command within Git because it's saying, hey, I want exactly what Muhis has done in this hyperlink. Okay.
Oh.
So it says, let's get this code that Muhis has written. Let's do another example now at this point. And I would say just maybe learn to download everyone's code. That's a great step. Like you learn what Git clone is doing. Okay.
Okay.
So let's
So we just
open.
write git clone and then we copy the link from their website and put it.
Yeah, you just copy the link and you put it. But the way I get the link is also from here. I click on the green button and I get the link, right? And then I put it there, right?
Okay.
So now I've found a way to get specifically that code, and Git has a reason why it does it this way. I think HTTPS is like the secure way of getting all of this stuff. I mean, I'm not the expert on that part. I know how to get these things. I don't know all the technicalities. So there is a limit to my knowledge also. But what GitHub also does is it lets you have access to all sorts of different things. See, this is basically like a Facebook for all sorts of code. So you can see I follow a few people who do a lot of different things, and they get code on all sorts of stuff. So let's take something like More Pants over here has been looking at something called adjust text. Is that a good one? Let's look at something else. Okay, Movies has been looking at something called Deep Dream. Have you heard of Deep Dream?
No.
So Deep Dream is this weird Google project that was started a while back that essentially, I think these are all computer generated art.
Oh.
So this is what artificial intelligence algorithms can do today. I mean, this looks like a lion, but all sorts of weird things are like just sitting within it. Huh? So you can look at this, right? Like this kind of code is just up there for you to use. And a lot of the stuff, like they say here, uses Jupyter Notebook. So there's a lot of cool stuff that is just sitting on the internet out there waiting to be like toyed around with. So let's say I want to look at this. Now you can see Muhis has done something. He's taken it from someone else. It says quote from someone else. So let's go to this person's version of this Deep Dream. I'll again click on this, right? I'll take the link, okay? And then I come to my terminal. I'm going to do ls because I'm inside Muhis's original project, which was DIP, right?
Yeah.
I did not cd out of it. If I type cd, I'll go back to like the basic root with just the tilde. Right now, we're
And
tilde
what is
download.
ls?
Ls is list.
Okay.
So it lists everything that's within that space. So let me go back one level to my downloads directory. So you can see right now that we're just in downloads, right? If I do cd dip, it'll now say downloads in short with dip. So I've changed into one more directory. So it keeps showing you all the levels you go into. Okay. So let's go back to downloads. And if I type ls, it lists everything in my downloads directory. So I've just got a bunch of things in my downloads directory. So this is now a Linux lesson at this point, right? So let's go back to DIP. I'll type git clone. That means I want to now clone something. What do I want to clone? This link over here, right? So I'll just click on that. It says copy. And I come back here and I do the copy paste with my computer. And now inside the DIP folder that I downloaded, I'll also see this Deep Dream stuff.
Okay.
And if I do ls, you'll see that PyTorch Deep Dream is now over here, which is a directory, and I'll change into that. Okay. And then if I look at that, I guess you are now on the screen, so let me minimize you. You see that there's a bunch of things, right? So actually, let me clear and show this again. We're inside the PyTorch Deep Dream directory, right? And I type ls, and I see all the files here, and you'll see they're the same ones that are actually on this page. Okay? So I'm trying to keep these two screens in sort of context. Okay? So now you can see that I'm using Git to like download a bunch of things. I'm using the clone command, which is basically like, hey, Git, download this thing for me. But you can now start to imagine a world where, okay, we're on Git. All this code is over here. How did they put this code on Git?
Yeah.
So there are commands within the Git thing that you run over here that lets you push code up. Okay? It's called pushing and cloning or pushing and pulling. There are all these different terminologies. Okay?
So
in
Git, can't we just like find and upload part and upload it?
You can, that's also possible, but there are reasons you might not want to do it. And we'll come to that as we progress. Or maybe I'll give you this a set of things to read also that lets you sort of expand your knowledge. Right now, you're thinking as one person who clicks on an upload button, puts a picture. But we're going to work in a team. We might all be working on the same code. So, you might click on an upload, I might click on an upload, and then it can work. You can still do it that way. But what Git actually is, if you go onto Wikipedia and type, or go onto Google and type, you'll see that it's something called a version control system.
Okay.
Okay, so it's like control. It basically is like a database management tool that also stores your code, but tells you like what kinds of changes have you made along the way to your code. Okay, so every time you make a change, you can like push the change up. So you'll work on your computer, then you'll come here into the terminal and be like, okay, what's happened to the code? Something. So as an example, it's a good question. So maybe we should go into this example also. Okay. Let's say that I go into the DIP folder. Okay, again, I've gone cd dot dot. So when you do dot dot, you go one level up. Okay, again, some command line knowledge. So that actually you will learn if you do the third link that I sent you in the chat. That's the introduction to Linux. So that's like a good thing to have. And I'm teaching you 2-3 basic commands of Git, maybe just one, just Git clone for now to get people's code. Okay. Then we'll teach you how to create repositories and things like that maybe in the next meeting. Hopefully Julia will join us for that. She'll watch this stuff and we'll probably be ready there for that. So I'll show you 2-3 more commands. Okay. So one is getting code from somewhere. We've done that so far. Now let's say that I want to edit something. Let's see what files are there. There's the readme.md file, right? The readme.md file, MD stands for Markdown. It's just a way of like writing Markdown files before, so you might want to read up about that. But it's just like another file format, like a Word, like a docx or something like that. I am going to edit this file. Now you don't have to copy this line. MVim is just like an editor that I use, so you can look up what kind of editors exist. What kind of operating system do you use, by the way?
Mac OS.
So you use Mac OS. Okay, cool. You may have MVim, but you might also have, let's see, if I just do edit, I wonder what comes. Nothing. Okay. Ed, readme. I don't know what all the commands are. Sometimes I just like play around with it, right? So it opens something. No, it doesn't. Maybe it does. No, it didn't open anything. Okay. I'll kill that. How do you kill? Alt D. No. All sorts of things here. Okay, I'm just going to close that terminal and come back. Hang on. That's just easy. So I'll go back to my downloads. I'll go back to DIP. So I did CD downloads DIP. I'm in there. And then I do mvim readme. That's just the editor I use. You can find out what kinds of editors exist. I've forgotten what all the commands are because it's been a while since I've done all these things. You can see I'm not the expert. I just know some things, not all things. So, there's a bunch of things that Movies has written on my editor that has opened, right? This is
Yes.
very similar to what he did before. Okay. Now, if I make a change, let's say I delete this line. I'll delete environment setup. Okay. So I'll delete that line. Okay. You see that line is gone, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to close this by saving it. This is just a command. Again, you don't have to worry about how to close and save it. I'm just going to save it. Then we're back to the terminal, right? We're on this black window where I can type things. I'm going to type git status.
Okay.
Okay. It's just going to tell me what is the git status of this repository that we downloaded, or this code that we downloaded. So it's going to show me two things. One is, I did like ed.hup. That's just that mistaken file that I just tried to start before and it didn't work, right? I typed ed and something that didn't work. But it shows something else here, which is modified. I modified the README file, right? Because the README file was already there in the DIP directory. I made some changes by deleting that headline, right?
Yeah.
So it shows that that's modified, and then there are two untracked files. One is ed.hup, that was a mistake, and then we downloaded pytorch.deepdream, which is not actually part of DIP. So it shows you that there are something that were not even part of it. So what can I do? These are some untracked files.
Okay.
Okay.
What's an untracked file?
Okay. So, when we came to DIP,
Yeah.
these were the things that existed here when I did git clone of DIP.
Yeah.
This does not have ed.hup or pytorch deepdream in it
Oh.
actually to the left. But I did the clones inside here. I did the ed command and all of that in here,
Oh.
right? So it just added it all to the directory. So let's do an ls, and you'll see that ed.hup has come from somewhere.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
pytorch deepdream came because I cloned it. Right. So let me also show you how you can delete something at the command line. You can go with a mouse into the directory and do like a left click or right click or whatever that is, and scroll down and click delete. Right. That's one way. Or the other one is rm ed.hup. Rm is just remove. It's the command for remove something, and that's it. It's gone. So if I do ls again, you'll see that between these two files, like if I highlight that and I highlight these, you see that ed.hup is gone. So it's an easy way to delete certain things. You can just do most things at the command line. Okay. So it's just faster. You don't have to keep moving your mouse, dragging, whatever. And I have a huge screen. I work on a 43-inch monitor, so it's just like a lot of arm pain. So, if you just have a keyboard, you can do a lot with just a keyboard. That's another reason the terminal exists. Basically, every time you click a delete button when you use the mouse, it's basically running this RM command. Okay. They're all like mappings between commands and buttons that they show you on the GUI. But this is how you basically would interact with the computer in a more fundamental basis. Okay. So we have this right now. Now, if I do git status again, you'll see that the modified file is still there and pytorch deepdream is still there. So you can see that what's happening now is it says untracked and changes not staged for commit. So when I make the change to the code here, let's say that you've written some code, not DIP, not something else, just like something that you had it on GitHub and you brought it back down and you made a change to a certain file. You've changed it, but GitHub doesn't have that change and you want to share it with me. You have to stage it for a commit. There is a process for that. And then you have to upload it, right? There's a command for that. So there's a push command. There's a commit and a push kind of thing. There are like some 2-3 commands that come with it. One of them is git status to see what the status is. Then there is an add command, there is a commit command. So this is where I'll send you some things to read that you have to start working with. I can give you an introduction, which is what this is, but you learn by doing certain things. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, there is a reason that I'm not going to show you those things. One is that I've basically cloned Mukhis's code. Right?
Yes.
I don't want to corrupt Mukhis's work. I can't push these changes to his work. He might allow me to do it, but that might just mess up what he's got going already. So I shouldn't do that, right? So there are many other concepts that come with this, but right now what I want you all to learn is going into the command line, being able to clone code, that you can get other people's stuff, and then I'll teach you how to maybe make changes and push them up. Okay.
Okay.
That's one part. So there's this. There is the terminal. So you are on a Mac. You don't have to worry because the Mac has a terminal as well. If you do Alt, is that Alt or Command? Command
Come
space.
on.
If you type Command space, I have something that shows up like this. But you have Spotlight, I think, in your case. If you
Oh,
type terminal, you'll get something. Yeah.
I
Do you
just
have
click on.
this?
I have like a magnifying glass on the top. I click it and I type
Yeah, you
terminal.
can do that also. I try to basically not use the mouse as much as possible because I don't like to hold it. My hand hurts. So you can basically open the terminal. Let's do what you were talking about. We'll click on that. You see that there. In Spotlight, you can type terminal. I think it'll show up. So if you do that, mine doesn't look that nice. Yours might look different because I've made some changes. So you see there's a terminal now. This is what yours might look like.
Yeah.
Uh, so this is where I would start if I was you. Okay. This is your entry point. You can do commands like cd. You can probably do the third of the links that I sent first. Look at that. Then you can look at, the GitHub thing is just like one example of a project. You don't really have to do much there. That was just for this tutorial. If you do want to do something with this code, the way I would use this code is to do this thing called forking. You see this button which says fork over here?
Yes.
So if you click on that, you can just say, okay, you might only have like your profile. So you have to create a profile on these things and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
I'll click on that and it'll create this thing and it'll say, oh, Angad/DIP. So that's my pro username. And this is my fork of Mugis's code. So now I can like get my version of the code, start making changes to that. And how I would do that is again, just like do git clone, blah, 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 blah. So there is like a process here that you have to kind of understand. It's not very straightforward, I know, so don't stress out. But I'll send you something to read again. But yeah.
Oh
Cool.
wait, so this code which is on GitHub, it's like if I go, I can edit the code and I can ruin the code as well. So like, why would he upload it?
He uploads it to share it with people. Like, why do you share pictures on Facebook? So
Oh,
that people can see it, people can do something with it. Okay, it's not as lame as liking something, but you can actually build upon this, right? Like a lot of important projects get built like this. Like look at the Deep Dream project. It's a Google code that's just like free for you to use and do something interesting with. But we can put permissions around who can add stuff also. So,
yeah.
it's not like just anyone can go and do anything. Maybe he gives you permission. I think I have permission to go mess up his code, but I don't want to do it.
Okay.
So there's that, right? So instead, what I do is I come to Muges's profile, like again, where Muges /DIP. I click on fork, right? I do that, and it creates a fork, and it does this thing, right? Let's do something for Deep Dream, right? I'll go back to the Deep Dream one. Maybe that's a good one to show again because I don't have that. Okay, so this is Gordy Kaleska /PyTorch-Deep Dream, correct? If I click on fork, it'll let me fork it. Where should we fork it? I have like multiple accounts. I'm using the one that's with my name, and now I've forked Deep Dream. Okay, so now I get the Deep Dream code. So I don't need to mess up Gordy's or Mugis's code bases. I make a fork and I work on my fork of that code. And this is my environment. This will not go to their work. This will just be in my thing. And how do I know that? Do you see this hyperlink?
Yes.
Then you see my name.
Yeah.
So it's
Oh,
like,
okay.
this is my version of this code. So, it's like very interesting. Like if you start to read what hyperlinks convey, also you start to get a lot of information. It's like a lot of mumbo jumbo looking stuff, but actually there's like content there. So I can now come here and I'm going to go back to my terminal because I like mine better. I'm going to go back, do CD downloads. Oh, I guess I messed up. I'm already in downloads. Okay. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do git clone and I paste that. And you can see that what I have here is the version of PyTorch Deep Dream that's associated with my name, with my username on GitHub.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just press enter. Now I have my own version of Deep Dream that I can like make changes to and push up. Okay, so let me show you even that at this point, I guess, because it's just a process, right? You'll still have to read the manuals or you'll have to watch this video again and again. And there are bound to be mistakes, but this is how you do the whole cycle. You get someone's code, you download it, then you, let's say we go into PyTorch Deep Dream. Okay, we'll do Git Status. You'll see that it says nothing. Your branch is up to date with something. There are a lot of concepts like origin, master, and all that you learn if you read the manual, which I'll send you. But the only way is not just reading the manual, but doing the work, making the mistakes, coming back, fixing them. It's a process, learning how to do this. This is why these skills are super valuable also, because you can see that if you're in a company, you put your code up, other people can play with it, but you need to understand some of these nitty-gritties. So this is what I want in my group also, is that people know how to make collaboration happen and then do their own projects. You can do your own project separately because your project is the code, but sharing it is the core kernel that everybody has to know, because you need to know how to collaborate with it. Okay?
Yeah.
Even if no one uses your work, in the off chance that someone somewhere in the world wants to use it, you've made that possible.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll come here. Let me make some changes. I'll open the README file. Okay. Uh, let's say that I remove the title. So you see how it says Deep Dream over here with like a computer and all this hard stuff and things
Yeah,
like that.
the orange stuff. Yeah.
This, no, this stuff here
Oh.
I've highlighted.
Oh. Okay. Yeah.
Right? You see that?
Hmm.
That comes from the first line in the README page over here.
Okay.
Okay. So I am going to delete it. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm going to save it. Then I'm going to come to my code and my terminal and type git status. You see that the README file has changed.
Oh, yes, modified.
It's modified, and there's something untracked. I'm not going to worry about the untracked file for now. I'm going to do git add readme.md. Okay, this is a command like git clone, git status, git add. How do I know I have to do git add? It says changes not staged for commit. Then it says use git add with the file name to update what will be committed. I'm just following the instructions the computer is telling me.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I add that file. Work. Okay, there we go. Then you do git status. Again, you'll see that, okay, it says modified. It's no longer in red, but it's like changes to be committed. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So now let's come here. I removed that file, that deep dream line, right, in that file.
Yes.
So technically, it should not be here anymore. So let me refresh this window. It's still there. Why is it still there?
Because you didn't upload it.
I didn't upload it, exactly. So there are three parts to the upload process. I added the file, but it's only changed in my computer, like on the hard disk. It's not on the internet. But one more step that Git wants you to do is it says make a commit. Again, you'll read what these things are, but this is a command that you need to know. Git commit. If you type just git commit, you'll get an editor open up and you can type a message.
Okay.
Or you can do what I do, which is git commit -m, which means git commit -message. I open inverted commas. I say made some changes to readme. Okay, I describe what I did and I close the inverted commas. Okay.
Okay.
And I do that. So now the changes have been made. I've left a little information bit to be like, what is the change that I made? Right? Now that's there. Do you expect the change to be up here now?
Yes, I guess. Yes.
Okay, let's see. No.
Oh.
Because there's one more command, which is git push. Okay.
Oh, yes, you said this.
We've still not pushed the change up. So git push, I'll type origin master. We'll explain what these things are over time. But this is basically the one that you would need at this point. But you type something like this, I'll probably get an error because I've not typed origin correctly. And now you've pushed the changes. It's going to give you some information about what's happening. Let's see. It says something, right? There's some stuff happening, which is good. All right. Now we should see the change.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh.
It's done. I know it's a bit of a process, but the thing is, ultimately, when you do this enough and you write a lot of code, you'll see that there's information that just makes sense. Okay. Now, how do I know that this change was made? You can come back to the top and there is information. There's a lot of information always on these pages that we just can ignore, but maybe we don't have to. So it says over here, Anga then made some changes to README, right? Or made some change to my typos. So you can see that there is the change. We can click on that and it'll show you what I removed. I did something there, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
So essentially, there is a full log of all the changes that I have made also, but also when I forked the code, there's actually a bunch of commits, right? You can see the commit is a thing. Someone changes something, they push it up with a commit message. So we'll click on that and we'll see how many commits are there. There are 79 commits before mine because there were 80, as it said there. This is the most recent one on my fork, right? It's
Yeah.
not in Gordy's thing. If we click on Gordy's, you'll see that he still has only his stuff, not my stuff, right?
Hmm.
So all the changes are just for my version of Deep Dream. So you see, like there's a whole process. Are you understanding the flow possibly of what's happening? I
Yeah.
know this is a lot of information, but there's
Yeah.
like a process going on.
Yeah. It was on your fork, so
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah.
Okay. So what have we really tried to learn over here is that there is a lot of code on the internet. You can get this code and play with it, and you can put that code back on the internet if you want it, and you can do this with your name attached to it. Okay.
Yes. And
Some fun things that you can see when you go to your profile, because we love our profiles a lot. Let's go to mine. Mine's not that great. You see, there's a lot of like contributions happening right now. Like in the last few months, I've worked on a few projects and I have a lot of code. But you can see that I did absolutely nothing here. So you get a lot of information about how you're working. But it's not just you who gets that information. If you have like your CV for a company, for a job that you're applying to, and you have a GitHub page and you show them this, they'll be like, okay, this person knows to use GitHub and they probably write some code. They're aware of the industry standard, and they can also see whether you contribute, right?
contribute is upload.
Yeah, upload, but you might be uploading many things, right? Like you might be stealing other people's code. Like Muhis and I just told the Deep Dream stuff. We're doing our own projects. Sometimes
Yeah.
we're part of organizations. So I'm part of something like SymPy. I'm part of Python Dynamics. I'm part of PyDy. I'm part of Epic Games for some reason. People require you to be a part of these things. Then yeah, so you can sort of like work on open source projects. So I've worked with SymPy in the past. I've contributed, so I was a member of SymPy then. So you can start to see where people have worked, what they've done, how you're participating in the software development movement in a certain way. So you don't just say things, you can demonstrate it. And I'm trying to like bring people up to a place where hopefully they learn to use these tools and they can show off a little bit and be like, you don't have to have amazing contributions. Like if you look at let's pick some coder here. Someone has to be really super busy. Okay, that's a bad example. Let's go to Jason. Jason probably is like super crazy. Like you can see his patterns are like quite intense,
Oh.
right? If you go to Muhis's, I think he does something every day. I don't think you'll see an empty spot in his profile. So you can see like he also makes his profile look quite nice, right? Like he's like, I've done
Yeah.
this 24 days continuously, like he's been coding. Like, look at that. It's just
Wow.
nuts, right? So if you see someone like that, you're more likely to hire someone like that.
Oh.
You can't argue against their stuff, I would say.
Wow.
He takes a lot of stuff, right? Like repositories are places where you've put your code in there. So
Hmm.
you can like start to see that he's worked on a bunch of different things. Obviously, he's not written all the code himself. Sometimes they'll tell you if he forked it. Sometimes he's like, I did this or I didn't do this. This is his portfolio of work. You can do a lot of things. Lots of people host their own websites on GitHub. So I think again, Muhis does that as well. Here's his website, right? Yeah, it's there somewhere. So he's a good example of someone who's like, I think an undergraduate student who's picked this stuff up and it'll demonstrate value as to why you should do these things. So
Yeah.
so
Wow.
again, to come back to your first question, how is it useful when you guys are working on different projects? Or you, not guys again. Anyway, I'll let you catch that. When you're all working on different projects, is you learn the same tools, you learn to share in the same way, just like we all share on Facebook. But our experiences are different on Facebook, and your code is going to possibly be different. But the way you share it, the way you understand how Git add, commit, status, clone, all of these things work, are
Hmm.
also there. So things that I think you should try to take away from today, if you want to write them down, I would say the first one, make, I guess, okay, let me try to write this in a way that would make sense to me. Let's see, notes. Are you on my this thing? You are, okay. Notes. Let's go here. Let's go here. So, okay. Let me try to write like a new note and say how I am seeing the way I've structured the information for you all today. One is terminal. Okay. Learn
Okay.
some commands. Uh, Using the. Can you read what I'm writing or no?
No.
Okay. So let me try to make this like heading size. Maybe that'll help. Does that help?
Yes.
Is it quite clear or still difficult to read?
No, it's clear.
Okay. So learning some of the commands using the command line. That's one. Oh my God. No. Title. Okay. So using the
Hmm.
command line. Oftentimes you'll see this called the command line interface or CLI or something like that. That's part one. Then the next one is was one. Then part two was Git. So Git. Four commands that we saw here are clone, which was the first one. When you make changes, then you can add it. Then you can commit it. I'll put commit -m as well. And there is push when you
Push.
put it back up on the internet. And there were some words that came after push, like origin and master. I
Yeah.
would say you have to like start looking up where to get this kind of information. A really good book for this. Go to Google and type ProGit. Okay.
Okay.
ProGit is a manual for learning to use GitHub, but there are lots of manuals. There's like something on Atlassian.com or something like this. There's like a bunch of places. Stack Overflow is a great place to get answers and knowledge. But I would say I started at ProGit a long time ago. I still go there. Maybe it's not that good of a resource. Maybe there's something better. But I think it's progit.org. So if you type that, you should probably go to a website that teaches you something about Git. Then we also saw not just Git, but GitHub. Okay, I'm going to make that big in a moment. I promise. So there we go.
Yeah.
So GitHub. And GitHub is just a website that stores all of this content and shows it to you in like an interactive form. It's a place to go explore the internet for code, basically. Okay.
Yeah.
But you have your own user profile, like it's like a Facebook for code. Okay. A Facebook for code. All right. So these are three things that we've kind of seen. I think maybe we saw more, but these are the cores that I want you to take away. The rest of it is not superfluous knowledge, but it's like the environment that we kind of try to work in. If your computer is your lab, which it increasingly becomes today, these are the tools that you definitely need to use. And of course, there's Python notebooks. We saw some of that stuff. And
Yeah.
that these four things are going to be central to anything that anyone does in my lab, but in many labs.
Okay.
Just saw Google uses these kinds of tools as well, and the pipeline, the tool chain is very similar. So if you want to ever work at these kinds of places, you're probably going to have to do that. If you want to work in a space company and write code for them as well as build things, you probably want to be the person who can do both, because you don't want to just be the laborer who assembles things. You want to have like that skill that takes you one level higher. These are some of the contemporary skills. So this is what I want you all to be able to learn. Even if you don't make technical contributions to the lab right now, hard to achieve in 4 months. If you pick up some of these tools, I think that will be amazing for you all, not just for me. I mean, for me, I don't know if it will be amazing, but it would be a good use of time, I think. This is
Okay.
roughly a 50-minute meeting, which means it's like almost a lecture. You can stop recording now, I guess. Or unless you have some questions you want to ask, we have 7 minutes, even though we were supposed to do a 30-minute meeting, I guess.
Oh, now you were very good at explaining it, and I now know I need to go through them, and also the thesis you sent me. I went
Yeah.
over the mechanics and the kinematics part of it, and I think there were the momentum principles where there was this matrix which I haven't like done it properly because I was like, oh no. So I think I'll do that part again and go.
Okay. One more thing that I want to add, I guess, I just realized I didn't talk about it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Uh, in the chat, I posted a second link, right? This icdl2021.org.
Uh,
It's link number
yes,
2 in the chat. You know how
yes.
to, yeah, like go into the chat. I just wanted to like bring that up because you asked about the projects that, there was the robotics project or something else. So last week we talked about the astrodynamics project,
Yeah.
right?
Wait, which is this the link you sent in today's meeting?
Yeah, in today's
Oh
chat. You
yeah,
can
the
just click on the chat.
ICDL. Oh yes, I can see.
Okay, so I'm gonna again share my screen.
Hmm.
Start broadcast. I'll go into the browser. All right, so this is the ICDL page. Okay, do you see
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
All right, so uh, basically, this is a conference on development and learning in robotics, and it shows you, I think, oh, where do we go? What? Huh? Okay, there's a real competition. Yeah, that's the one. Sorry, I should have sent you that. This is something about open-ended learning in robots. So this is like a simulation of a robot that you teach it how to pick something up. You can see it's trying to do that. It's learning to interact with objects, stuff like that. So this is another project that is possible for you guys to work on, you girls. My God, why am I on? Uh, but you see, so it's the fact being that there are robotics projects to work on. There is the astrodynamics projects that if you want to do, you can do. Uh, what you can take away from here is that first of all, there are lots of companies and organizations that get involved with these kinds of things. So it's a way to get into a competition that is recognized by people, sort of facilitates an interaction with Microsoft or whoever else. Lots of other sort of universities, it's just a bunch of people. That's part one. Part two is that I think we might see GitHub mentioned somewhere, which tells you that the tools won't change. So this is last year's version of the competition. Uh, it's all there. GitHub, is it there? Yeah. So you'll see that the necessary software to participate is available on GitHub. They're like, go into this place and download this stuff, right? So you'll see that at the end of the day, whether you do robotics or not, you're going to be using a similar framework to work either with me, but also on competitions. Now, one thing that I wanted to actually talk about when we were gonna meet, if we met as a group, was to be like, okay, first spend some time learning these tools for the next month because this competition doesn't start till August 23rd. Okay, but if we wanted to pivot a little bit, we would be able to do that and spend 3-4 months working together on something that you, possibly Mukesh, possibly Julia. I mean, we need a team. We can't just be one set of people who don't know any of these tools and we're learning how to do this. But if we spend some time learning these set of tools and contributing some code, even if it's just learning to compute stuff that it in the astrodynamic stuff, learning the tool chain, like you write your Python notebook, you put your Python notebook up here. We're learning some of the tools that would let us participate in the competition to some extent.
Okay.
Okay. And then we would be able to run experiments, distribute work to people in different ways, right? Like that's what I would be able to do with you all. So we can all learn to pick up some tools, run a bunch of different research exercises. Maybe you want to do both. It may take a lot of time. Maybe you don't want to commit that much time, but these are all free things and you learn many new things. And I think that's the beauty of like mostly being young and curious or just being curious, one of those two things. But when you're young, you have the time also to maybe dedicate, but we all need to have personal lives also. I get that. But yeah, I'm just trying to like sort of show you the links between all the tools, the different kinds of projects, and give you the freedom to maybe decide that, okay, I work on some things, not maybe everything that interests you, but there are a few things, and these are the few things that I'm looking at right now.
Okay, yeah, sure. I would try to steer my work towards the project and I'll go for it.
Which project?
The ICDL thing, and I will
Oh, you
look
want to
at
look
the
at the
thing.
competition?
No, I will just look at it. I don't
Yeah,
think
yeah.
I have the
Take a look.
skill for
Think about
it.
it. Think about it because it's interesting from a perspective of like getting into the field of AI, thinking about problems like how do you pick up a phone or a cup and why do you take it for granted? Why is it such a challenging thing for a computer to learn to like do these things? So it's interesting from that perspective. But the same technology stacks actually and methodologies, the same math underlies the movement of a spacecraft. Like I'm trying to look at how do you have a robotic arm like that on a satellite that can build a habitat. That's really what I am interested in, right? Those are the kinds of projects I want to push towards, but you have to understand some of these kinds of things, learn the new technology stacks, come up with a new problem. These, so it's like you have to learn about many different things over time, but life is long. And like if you start now, maybe in 2 years, 3 years, we can all be in different places. Maybe in 6 months, we can be in a different place.
Yeah.
And you might have an idea and you can write a proposal to someone, get that funded, do a PhD, ideally with me, things like that. So
Yeah, this is a lot of stuff. I guess I'll have to watch this recording again.
yeah. I mean, most of these things, like, okay, when you do this kind of stuff, it does require you to not just watch, but also engage and run the terminal commands. It's hard to do because I didn't prepare you all enough maybe today because I was also like, but I need to like give you all this intro as people send me emails and ask for things. I am also learning whether I should create certain resources that people can just watch. That's one reason we recorded this, is that I can watch it again, maybe make a better set of videos and have like something on the group page. Be like, these are the tools we use. This is how we use them. This is like an introduction, but you have to keep doing this to learn to make the mistakes.
Yeah.
One aspect of using GitHub when you make commits is, you pull your own code, you make some changes, you push it, then someone else pulls your code, makes some changes, pushes it, and we're part of an organization. Something can break. We have to be willing to make those mistakes and fix them when we make them, because someone's code is going to break someone else's code. It's just bound to happen. It's just how these things work. So you want to encourage mistakes, but also know where the mistake happened and get that out. So it's like, and the only way you do learn these things is by doing. I can introduce you to a tool, but that doesn't mean you know the tool. You can't just put it on your CV. You could, but someone's going to ask questions at some point, or they're going to be like, I had this person, they can't do this work. This is a problem. So, it's like a way to just like start off. It's low stakes mistake making, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I will stop recording.
yeah, sounds good. All right. I think we'll